You know, back in the old days, there was this program called Layaway where you can go into like a store and start making payments on something, some high dollar ticket item. And once you paid that off every month, it was yours. You could take it home. That's how I bought my first deer rifle from the Marine Corps PX on Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. And it was the first, weapon that I bought that I purchased myself. It wasn't a hand-me-down. It wasn't my dad's. It wasn't anything like that. So I went and I picked out this 30-06, and I just didn't have a lot of money. And so I did the layaway program, but I needed a scope on it. And the cheaper scopes were all sold out. And so I bumped up to like this entry-level loophole scope and put that on the layaway program and had them all, put the whole package together for me and all that. Made the payments and finally got to bring it home. Ever since then, almost every rifle I've owned has had a loophole scope. In fact, I'm having a custom rifle built this year, and it's going to have the loophole Mark 5 HD scope on it. I just killed a buffalo with that scope. It's a really great product. And loophole guys, you know them. Everybody knows loophole. They've been around since like 1907. They started as like a special instrument company or something like that. But these American-made products are fantastic. Whether you're looking for a spotter, binos, a rifle scope, accessories, tripods, bipods, all that kind of stuff. You can find it all at loophole.com. And I'd really appreciate if you supported this American company that has a great American story. And I couldn't be a bigger fan of a company. And I'm so happy and thrilled that they've chosen to partner with the Western Huntsman. Thanks to Leupold, and thanks to you guys for supporting our great sponsors. I'd like to welcome Mystery Ranch as a sponsor to the Western Huntsman. This is a great product. Specifically, we're going to talk about the Mysterium line. Those packs include the Sawtooth 45, the Sawtooth 65, the Beartooth 85, and the Marshall 105, depending on, what you're doing with the pack. If you from day pack to backcountry, plenty of space. I like what they wrote on the website. Between the disciplines of calculated preparation and in-the-moment focus, an intangible alchemy exists. We call it Mysterium. It is our most ambitious, tech-rich line of Mystery Ranch hunting packs, constructed for the most methodical hunters. I'd agree with that. It's a great pack, guys. I really like the ventilation system. When you put it on, it's nice and tight, but you're still breathing a little bit less of that buildup between the pack and your back when you're sweating and out there packing through the mountains and whatnot. It's a super functional pack, very comfortable, very good at carrying loads. I've been using it all spring between bear and just like I do a lot of rucking to keep in shape, and it has done a phenomenal job. I've got a lot of top-of-the-line packs out there, and I've always kind of geeked out with packs, but I really do like the weight distribution and the way that it allows you multiple options as to where you're going to either carry a water bladder or one of those Contigo containers or whatever you're going to use. Really impressed. I love the ease of how everything functions on it, too. You don't need to watch a bunch of videos to figure out how to undo everything to pack a bunch of meat out. That's really important for a guy like me, I promise. I'm not super smart. So the simplicity, the comfort, the load distribution, it all makes for a wonderful backcountry hunting pack. If you are in the market, check it out at mysteryranch.com/mysterium. There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Western Huntsman Podcast. This is Jim Huntsman coming at you from the Broken Time studio where the internet actually works. And brought to you by Eastman's Hunting Journals. And I wanted to just introduce this week's guest because we tried to do this last week while I was up at elk camp on the mountain. And the old Starlink, if you listen to last week's episode, you'll notice it was cutting out a lot, and we talked about it a lot, but the old Starlink just was not keeping up. And for those of you watching on video, yes, to you it looks like my right eye, but it's my left eye. Got all jacked up while I was swimming through some good old Northwest Montana reprod, and a branch came back and scratched my eye really bad. So if I look like I got punched, that's kind of why. It's not black, but it's all like just messed up and red, and I don't know what the camera could pick up. But anyway, that's what's going on with the eyeball. It's healing up. So my buddy Zach Hanson on Instagram, he is at Let Me Die Learning, is a return guest. He is quickly becoming one of my favorite authors. A few years ago, I had him on for a book that he wrote called Turning Feral. And it's this amazing story of somebody who is pursuing what we all consider to be this societal norm, if you will. And he got kind of sick of that lifestyle and moved out into the middle of nowhere and got himself really proficient at hunting and trapping and all sorts of other things, leaving kind of that white collar life behind, but still maintaining that job where, you know, the nice thing in today's day and age, you can live anywhere if you can work remote. And so Zach has done it again with another book, and it's called The Trade Gap, and it's a really important topic. It's an important topic to me, and I think as a society, it's an important topic for everybody because there is this lacking that we are seeing in the trades, and the ability to replace these. Mostly, this is a men's demographic, but that is changing. But anyway. Being able to replace these guys that are retiring out of the trades, whether they're plumbers or welders or electricians or, you know, taxidermists, you know, whatever the case is, we don't have the pool of folks coming in to replace them behind. And so we're kind of, you know, going to talk about that because this book really dives into why that's happened, what the repercussions of that could potentially be, and how it has changed his life. And it is a super interesting read. In fact, I've got it right here, a good old signed copy of The Trade Gap from Zach Hanson himself. So all that said, Zach, I appreciate you joining me, man. I'm looking forward to this episode. And here's round 2, and hopefully it'll work better than when I was at elk camp.
Yeah, but you're a little less handsome than you were last time we were on with your scratched eye.
I know. I look like an ogre or something, man.
I was thinking, I thought when I saw you, maybe it was one of your daughters that got fed up with you at elk camp and let you know what was up.
That could be. I'm not going to say it was, and I'm not going to say it was. All I'm going to say is it happened at elk camp.
I fell into some brush.
Yeah. Exactly. So, well, buddy, you did it again with this book. I mean, I got to tell you, I feel like you just really knocked it out of the park from a standpoint of like anybody can try to tackle a subject and put it to paper and try to explain like concepts. But it takes a special kind of writer to be able to put it into take these concepts that a lot of people would like, you know, their eyes would glaze over at the you know, the content or the topic itself. You were able to take this and make this a super interesting read. It's how many pages are in this book, by the way?
It's not long. I think maybe 160, 180.
Yeah, it's not like
230 or something. So
yeah. But interestingly, I knocked this book out in like a day. And I don't normally have the attention span. I mean, look at me, man. I don't have a good attention. I have like ADD and all sorts of whatever else things they call it. But I was able to knock this book out at camp a few weeks ago in a day. It really captured my attention, and it helps that I'm you know, it's a personal topic for me. And I've been in the trades a long time, and I've seen the negative impact of the lack of tradespeople out there and the misconception that we as Americans might have over being in the trades and like this kind of frowning upon not pursuing, you know, digital basket weaving degrees and whatever else you want to call it. So talk to us a little bit about, first of all, for anybody that doesn't know who you are, give us a quick snapshot of your background and tell me like what brought you to the point to write this book on this particular topic, because it's great.
Well, first off, thank you. I mean, I'm always humbled with good feedback, and it's nice after you write something, even if it's not the longest book in the world, but it's always good to hear that. So thank you. And then, on myself, people have listened to episodes with us in the past. Like, I am a white collar, overeducated, typical of my generation, a millennial individual who went the college route, college or bust, got a digital basket weaving degree, or at least its equivalent, political science, and, ended up not being able to find work like I was promised. And then instead of going and thinking about how I could be a, beneficial member to society and maybe taking on a trade, I doubled down. I doubled down with everything that I did and went and got more education. And when that didn't pan out, I got more education and subsequently more debt. Now, for me, it did eventually work out. So I want to be clear. Like, I was able to bully my way into a technology career. I've been working in the artificial intelligence space for the past 12 years. But along the way, I got disillusioned with that lifestyle. And that's what the whole, book Turning Feral was all about. My kind of leaving that white picket fence, 2-car, 2.5 kid type of lifestyle. And
big mortgage.
Yeah, being more self-reliant. Now, what I didn't realize was in that quest, like where I learned to hunt, specifically trap and do other things, those were skills. My definition of a trader skill is very broad, but those were skills that can fetch a fee for doing it if you know how to do it pretty well. And then you fast forward, and in 2023, I lost my technical job. Everything, like Meta was laying people off, Google, you saw it across the board. And it came about the time that these LLMs, these big models were like coming about. You kept hearing in the diaspora about, job loss due to AI. And I was one of those people. And what turned out was the only thing that ended up paying my bills and my mortgages after 11 months of unemployment was trapping and doing some side of desk taxidermy. And it was amazing to me because I never had a skill before, like a hard skill, but this was something I happened to pick up, and it happened to be the lifeline that got us through till I found another job. And that was where I started to think, like, holy shit, we have really taken our country down a wrong path with the direction of education. And that's, where the book kicked off and where my kind of study of the statistics and of the path toward putting everybody on this college or bust mentality really kicked off.
Yeah. And importantly, I guess before we get into like some of the main content and the nuts and bolts of the discussion, I want people to understand, like, from my standpoint, I went to college as well. So I am not throwing rocks at pursuing a college degree. That's not the point of this, because I think that it has its place. That I think that the difference is like, my parents really put the screws to my brother and I about, you got to go to college, or, blah, 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 you're not going to have a future. And so did the school counselors and the teachers and the football coaches and the, name whoever.
Mm-hmm.
I am not passing that torch with my kids. I am not recommending college unless they have a specific field that they want to go into that requires it. Okay, you want to be a lawyer? Yeah, you better go to college. You want to be a nail tech? That's a trade.
Yep.
And it's a value. It's a very valuable thing. You want to be a plumber? That's a very valuable thing. And I'm trying to not extend to my children like this mentality that tradespeople are lesser than.
Mm-hmm.
As citizenry. They're you became an electrician, you must not have been smart enough to go to college, right? Because it's like, I'm a roofer by trade. I've been in the HVAC industry. I wish I was better in that industry, because I wish I could fix air conditioners a lot better than I can, but I can't. They confuse me. But I wish, like, looking back, I would have never stepped foot into college based on what I do now for a living. It would have been much better for me to go to like a trade school or work under a journeyman in name your trade for 4 years and whatnot. And I think that my life would have turned out a little bit more fruitful, because of college. Not only did it set me back from a standpoint, it confused me as to what I wanted to do as an adult, but it also left me in in a huge amount of debt, even though I had the GI Bill. You know, when you're young and just out of the military, I spent that GI Bill money mostly on beer and chasing women than I did on actual sending it to the college, right? And so I just racked up debt. And so anyway, that's, I think, why I'm so passionate about this book. And by the way, that is a rad safe you have behind you. That thing is a monster, man.
Yeah,
Like
I wish it was full of gold bullion. I mean, it's got the second best thing. It's got good, 2A type of stuff in there, but it'd be better if it was full of gold and silver.
Like, did you have to get some kind of backhoe or something to get it in there? That thing is it just looks heavy.
Have you not seen these pythons, Jim? Come on. Just kidding. Yeah, definitely had some help on that one.
I dig it, man. I keep getting distracted by the size of that safe. I have a big one too, but I think yours is that thing is bigger than mine.
Yeah, that's every guy's ultimate goal, right?
And see, right, and like now we're getting into this keep up with the Jones. Where does this come from? This idea that we've got to get this education to keep up with the Jones and have the best minivan on the block and all that. I love the way your book goes into the history of all this, and it talks about ancient cultures and how they taught people to be not only philosophical but also hands-on, learn a skill, and that is what is like the truest form of, I don't know what's the word for it, philosophical mastery or like something.
Enlightenment, however you want.
Yeah, enlightenment's a great way to put it.
Well, in the book, and I'll spare the detail because it's in the book, but one of the things that intrigued me as I was starting to reflect on my own like unemployment, my own ability to survive off the limited trades that I did know at the time. And I was like, how has this played out in history? And it's almost comical because, you look back in history at great civilizations, the Roman Empire, every oscillation that we are, where, civilizations are built on the backs of tradespeople, right? Mm-hmm. Rome building aqueducts and, whether you say like Egyptians and the pyramids, unless you believe aliens did it, but everything was built by people, by tradesmen and tradeswomen, if you want to go that far, but that's how it was done. And then you get to a point where you have this ability then, once a society is kind of refined, you have the infrastructure in place to live relatively comfortably. That opens up people to have more free time. What happens in more free time? You have more time to think. You have more time to reflect. You have the ability to think about philosophy. When you're not worried about where your food's coming from or what's going to be over your head to keep the elements off of you, that's when you can start to say, why is the sky blue? Why does that moon go around and change shape, every 30 days? That's interesting. And that's where you start to get the didactic education going. And that's what happened in Rome. And then you go to this period where life becomes so easy that the emphasis is removed from warriors and tradesmen and women to everybody needs to seek this higher education and philosophical enlightenment, which again, in and of itself is not bad, but it seems throughout history, it always comes at the cost of the tradespeople, where they stop training people how to keep up with the infrastructure. They stop training their military warriors. And then another civilization comes on and people are arguing over, insert any philosophical thing that we're battling in our modern age today. Same thing back in Rome. And then the empire falls. So you see this pattern and it's like, well, why are we not addressing it? Because we're clearly at that end of the spectrum that Rome was at the end of their days, where we are over-indexed on higher thought, which again, in and of itself isn't bad, but it has come, in the statistics in the book show it, at the cost of anybody able to keep up with our infrastructure, anybody able to keep up this call a guy, mentality that we've had for the last 30, 40 years. And it's going to implode, and it already is.
Do you feel like, and we talk about getting philosophical here, but current events, what we're going through kind of as a country, because and again, guys, for those of you listening, it's in the book how over the last few decades how this has kind of transpired and gotten us to where we're at now. And there's a lot of data and in numbers in there to back up the theories in this book, or the content in this book, if you will. But the state of affairs as to where we're at right now. We've got this society where people they live these comfortable lives. They can have pizza delivered just right off of their phone without getting off the couch. We don't worry about, for the most part. I understand there's always, struggling folks out there, but the vast majority of Americans, we don't worry about where our next meal's coming from. We don't worry about if it's going to rain. We don't worry about neighboring tribes coming in the dead of the night and stealing our women and blah, blah, blah. All the things that folks used to worry about that got us to this point. It's like that meme that was going around, what was it? Weak men create tough times create blah, blah, that concept. And I believe in that concept. And as we're looking at, here we are, kind of into September 2025, Charlie Kirk was just murdered, assassinated in front of the entire world over disagreement, over ideology, over, where as a society do we have we gotten to this point where our own self-righteousness gets us to a point where we think that it is okay to shoot somebody right in the neck in front of hundreds of people, thousands of millions of people on the internet, right? The images that'll never get out of our head at this point. Does this tie together? And I don't even know if this is like appropriate to ask you, but does all this tie together? I think about this a lot, and it keeps me up at night. Are we so bored with our comfort that we've come to this point where we just think that to fulfill some level of self-importance that doesn't exist, we find it okay to murder people?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a tough question. And like you said, we all watched. And so for those, it's Friday, September 12th. This happened a day and a half ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And like you said, everybody watched it. And, the unfortunate part is, myself included, we're all relatively desensitized to violence. Now, this affected me, this affected you, this affected way more people than you would have expected it to. But, as an example, I don't know if you saw in Dallas, same day, early morning, there was an Indian motel owner, and he had a gentleman, I think he was a Hispanic gentleman, turns out he was an illegal immigrant, but he was working there and they were coworkers. The Indian man owned it with his wife and child. They were cleaning a room together and they had a disagreement. I don't know what the disagreement was over, but this was like a 34-year-old male. And then the Indian man was 54 years old. They had a disagreement. He pulled out a machete and started chasing him. And he chased him back to the lobby where his wife and 9-year-old son were, maybe 11, but he was a young boy.
Yeah.
And he hacked him to death.
Yep.
And hacked his head off and then kicked it out like a soccer ball into the parking lot. It's all in video. And so I'm sitting there watching a guy's head get kicked like a soccer ball. Yeah, it affects me. However, you do that, and then Charlie, and then the arena, Zaklutska, or whatever her last name was.
Yeah, on the subway, the poor girl that was just, so random, man. I mean, just so vile and random. This guy gets up and stabs her right in the neck. She didn't even
know what happened.
See it coming. Yeah, and and what furthermore, Zach, is everybody else on that train just sat there and let her die and bleed out. Yep. I don't mean to bring all this up, buddy. Because I really want to talk about the book. It just vexes me that we're at this place, and I just don't understand where this evil comes from and how we get it under control. It's evil.
It is, and I think that's we'll go on a different tangent, but it is a faith-based thing. Like my buddies in Montana, the mountain tough guys. They do have a saying, it's like crush evil. Like it's everything you do. Like you have to be vehemently against evil. You have to have the cojones to stand up when you see it. You have to be able to fight against it. Like I know you would for your kids, your family, just like I would for my kids. And that's why I train. That's why I still do jiu-jitsu all the time. That's why I go shoot. That's why I do all these different things. Yeah, it's fun. All that's fun. But it's for a purpose. It's for a purpose to be able to stand up for yourself. It's for a purpose to stand up against evil when that time comes. Now, I hope that time never comes. I hope that time never comes for my kids. But we're on this path where it seems like it's impossible for it to not ever be the reality at some point. Because you then see somebody who, yes, divisive 100%, Charlie Kirk. But, I think like everybody, I've never watched so much Charlie Kirk than I have in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, same, man.
And, like I've always watched them. And, I mentioned before, like I'm on the Turning Point Action website. Like, I've always kind of been in that vein. However, never met the guy. There's some stuff I agree, some stuff I disagree with him on. But when you start to look at the record of what he was doing, you have to respect it, because rarely was he combative, and like he was a very smart guy. And this actually goes, to kind of bring it back. You asked if it ever ties in, but in the last 24 hours of watching so much Charlie Kirk, like one of the repeating themes he had was, college is a scam. Not because he's against college and educating, but what we happened in this country, and this probably gets to why we're so divided, is you have to do this, otherwise you're dumb. And his point in all these conversations about college is a scam he'd have with these kids, he's like, look, college doesn't give you wisdom. College does, it can if you're open to it, but for the vast majority, it's not about wisdom. It's not about learning about life. In very rare cases, you even don't learn the facts the right way. But he's like, it's not bad to go to college if, like you said at the beginning, you have a purpose. But most of us were pushed into college because we didn't know what we wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And that's the wrong answer. And, I think all of this just kind of ties back into like, we've lost our ability to have this discord because everybody's so far removed digitally that, anybody can bully anybody without getting popped in the lip. And that's been that way for the last 10, 15 years and continually gotten worse.
You ever had seen been to like, let's say a Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation banquet? You get all these hunters in the room, and all these hunters, they have like these different opinions about the best way to kill an elk, right? Or the best camo, or the best caliber, or the best bugle tube to use, and all this stuff. But when they're all in that banquet and around each other, they're friends. They're not ragging on each other, throwing their pork chop or anything. No, it's usually prime rib. They're not throwing fists. They're not going at it and calling everybody an idiot because they like a different type of camo. It's not like Facebook. And I think that just speaks to what you were saying there is we are so hands off with each other and so disconnected. Like, look at you and I, you're probably 600-700 miles away from me. And we're sitting talking face to face though, via the internet. And this is what we could do. And modern technology, that it really does offer, 30 years ago, we couldn't do this. Yep. And this offers a great opportunity I love meeting guys like you, Zach. I look up to guys like you that are you're well spoken, you're accomplished, you're able to do some geeky computer AI stuff, but you can also trap, and you can do taxidermy and all these other things that you have capabilities in, welder, all these things. But without this modern technology, I wouldn't normally have that capability to rub elbows with a guy like you.
Yeah.
But here we are. It bodes to this point of we are kind of disconnected even with this better connection and connectivity, because the stuff that people say to each other on Facebook, you wouldn't say that at the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, because you'd leave with an eye looking like mine right now.
Well, it's fun to say that. I have like a perfect example. Like last year, I was going to a lot of banquets because I was involved in everything going down in Colorado with the Prop 127.
Yeah. I saw that.
And I was going to all these different banquets and all these different things. And, love them or hate them, Cam Hanes received so much hate online. Yeah. And people I know are like, fuck that guy, whatever. No one ever says anything to his face. Like, I met him. He's a nice guy. Like, he shakes your hand. I mean, I've never had any deep conversations with him. However,
Cam Hanes would dude, he would give you the shirt off his back. He is a genuinely, legitimately, authentically very nice human being, and people attack him online. Whenever I see somebody ragging on Cam, I just look at it as like, you're just jealous, man. You can't run 200 miles in the mountains like Cam can. I mean, what is it? September 12th. He's already killed an elk and a giant mule deer buck. And I just come out of the woods with nothing to show for it but a scratched up eyeball. The guy just is that good. And people hate that. And I think that that's part of, not to totally get us and derail us off this topic, but this all ties together, man. This philosophical concept of humans are just getting soft. The world is too comfortable. We don't emphasize things and prioritize things like knowing how to change a dang tire on your car. Like, that's what I think the good work you're doing is bringing this to the forefront, where people come out of this book. Like, I literally got done reading the book, man, and I got on the closest community college to me. I Googled it. Was North Idaho College down in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Because I wanted to see what trade programs they had. Because I'm like, man, I could. I'm only 44. You're not too young, or I'm not too old. I could start over if I wanted to. I don't need to, but why not? Why not go to a welding class? Why not go to a plumbing apprenticeship program? Because honestly, I see some of the most financially successful people I know are in the trades. Like they are in the trade. It's not a secret. I make way more money than a lot of my friends I went to high school with that got master's degrees. And it's circumstantially because there's a need for it, and it's respectable and it's honorable to be a tradesman. And so this idea of having men specifically, and I mean that in no like sexist kind of way for anybody listening. It is just for men specifically. I think that you are lacking something in your inner soul if you don't have some kind of level of hands-on capability. I'm not saying that in a mean way. I think that men need to have those skills to fulfill them. What say you on that?
Man, you hit on so many different points there, and it's exactly what I'm preaching in the book.
Experience the evolution of accuracy with the new Browning X-Bolt 2. Guys, this rifle is something else. With the introduction of the X-Bolt, Browning has set a new standard in the development of bolt-action rifles. It was created around the goal of total accuracy, where every component worked in unison to improve downrange performance straight out of the box, from windswept tundras to rocky peaks high above the tree line to African plains and everywhere in between. The X-Bolt delivered the tack-driving accuracy a Browning rifle is respected for. And that's super true, guys. I really like this rifle from a standpoint of, like, it's not super heavy, it's not super light. I put a really nice scope on it. I love that Veritech stock, because that is like one of those pieces of accuracy that, that interface between the rifle and the shooter. Not everybody's the same size. The DLX trigger, you can get the plus magazine system for extra rounds. Great all-around rifle in the field. For those of you that are looking for a rifle this year to take to the field that you can feel real confident in and get really comfortable with, this is the rifle to check out. The Browning X-Bolt 2 should be one of your top contenders. Link is in the show notes.
The book is targeted at two different people, right? One, I hope people who are young and considering college or considering the trades, pick it up and read it and take it as just like a cautionary tale from my perspective, right? I'm the person who went through that gauntlet. Maybe you want to go through it too. Maybe you have a specific thing you want to do with a college education. That's great. Or it might say, hey, there's another path. But the real target are all the people like me who are in this knowledge working ecosphere. You went already down the path of education. You paid your debt. You may have a job. You may have a great paying job. But to open your aperture to see that these jobs are starting to dwindle, right? Like, I call it in the book digital dust. Like, for the past 12 years, I've essentially created PowerPoint slides. And if my son, my daughter asked me, like, hey, Dad, let's say in 5 years, what did you do with your career? Like, I have nothing tangible to show them. I'm like, well, there was this one application in Capital One that no longer exists that I did. And I wrote a bunch of PowerPoint slides to executives to argue why we should do it for 2 years. And none of that exists anymore. It's all dust.
Mm-hmm.
But, after going to my night welding course, like one of the most proud things I have on my desk and what I'm holding up is just 2 1/4-inch pieces of steel held together by a really shitty weld. And these were my first welds. Like, if anybody's a welder looks at this, they'd laugh out loud. But I'm more proud of this little piece of steel tacked together sitting on my desk as I still do my day job as an AI person. Like, and it reminds me that there's stuff that's tangible. But, I've interviewed so many trades folks like you, roofing. Like, I'm sure you drive around and you occasionally go past the place that you did. And you're like, man, I did that. You can point at your kid and say, like,
I do all the time. See that roof over there, girls? That was my roof. I all the time, man. And it's been like that. And my dad's did that too. My dad did that too. I built that house over there. And I liked that. I liked that tangibility that you're talking about. Because I do in the nature of my job now as a business owner, I do a lot of non-tangible things throughout the day. And it's not like I'll be sitting at this laptop right where I'm sitting right now all day long, knocking out, marketing stuff, whatever I'm working on. And I get up at the end of the day and my wife will ask me like, how was your day? And I'm like, man, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be productive. It's going to take weeks for this to materialize. I don't know if I can ever get to that point where I can look back and, this is a result of me sitting at my laptop 2 weeks ago doing this, where when I go install metal on a roof forever from that point on, I know that there is a tangible thing that is a product of my own hands. And I love it. And I kind of, like when I was in my 20s, I didn't like manual labor. I think it had a lot to do with I dug a lot of fighting holes when I was in the Marines.
Yep.
And I got sick of it. But now I enjoy stuff like that. I dug this giant ditch to run a power line out to this shop. And I did it by hand. I had the option to go down and rent this machine to do it. But I just, there was nothing wrong with me spending a few hours and just digging it by hand. I enjoyed it. I felt like I got a workout, and I had this tangible thing at the end of the day. I had electricity out to this spot that I didn't have electricity before. And I did it all. I ran the wires. I ran the pipes. I did all that. And there's this fulfilling thing that happens when you do that, that when you lay down at night, people that have never done that, specifically men that have never done that tangible thing and laid down after taking a shower because they were so dirty and sweaty from doing all that work, that fulfillment, you're missing it. If you haven't ever done it, you're missing what the pride and the confidence that it gives you, that I think a lot of, again, going back to kind of as a society, I think a lot of men are missing, and that lack of satisfaction is what's creating a lot of the turmoil that we see in our society.
Yeah.
And I don't go ahead.
I think that's where you have to, if you're not in the trades, if you're not doing that, like, every man needs hardship. You like, whether you're doing the campaigns and you want to go run an ultra marathon, you might get that same satisfaction from doing that and never have to leave your, corporate day job. That was me for the longest time before I did the whole turning feral thing. I was finding outlets that were tough, that still built grit and resilience. It just didn't happen to be a valuable trade. And I could have been digging holes. I could have been learning to run machines, but I didn't. So like the argument that I have is, if you think about a Venn diagram, like you have people in one circle that are tradespeople, and you have the other circle, what I call knowledge workers, people who have gotten degrees and are working in some form of like this digital dust ecosphere. There's a huge overlap in the middle. Like you have people on either side. One side is going to be people who were born to swing a hammer and they were never going to pick up a book in their life. That's great. On the other end of the spectrum, you have the PhD types who are going to have the soft hands. They physically can't pick up a hammer and they were never meant to. But there's this overlap, like you said, and this goes back to not throwing rocks at college, but it's people like who are already in the trades who could probably learn a lot from people who have been in the business side, whether that's them going to get a business degree or something to build the marketing side, the financial side, whatever. And then you have all these people that are in the knowledge working part of that overlapping bubble who can learn a lot from like building a skill set. Like you said, going like I did at night school to like pick up a welding skill.
Yeah.
All of those things made me better at my day job because I have an appreciation for, chemistry, for electricity, for like, as I'm looking at how these algorithms are built and are running, like, oh, this takes power. This takes those data centers that are being built all over the country with tradesmen and women doing it. And it just makes everybody better. But that takes a real general education and an openness to learn both sides, both from a tradespeople perspective and a knowledge worker perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. And it reminds me, I know when we attempted to record this while I was at elk camp, we got into this a little bit, but it reminds me what you just described there. Like my dad, he's got a degree in psychology, and he spent his life mostly doing white collar stuff as kind of like an entrepreneur kind of dude. He opened and sold a bunch of companies and stuff, but he also built his cabin and did all the tile and did all the electrical and did all the plumbing and did all the siding and did all the roofing and did everything. He did everything on this cabin. And like, I have a lot of respect for people that can, how did you put it last time we were trying to record this? People that could recite Shakespeare on the left hand, and on the right hand, they could build a woodshed, or whatever, however you phrased it. I love the way you did it. And that's the problem with when we go to record an episode and it's not working out and we have to redo it, is I don't want to miss out on some of the content that was so great last time. But
then we just get to tell people I said the most amazing thing. You just have to trust us that I was on point.
He didn't miss a beat, folks. He's on top of it. But I love that concept. What do you think is on the whole topic of the tradesmen and the fact that I think I mentioned this last time we recorded as well. I get excited and tongue twisted here, but I remember when I read the book, I looked up some of the stats and the data, and it was like this astronomical amount of like boomers that are retiring that are our tradespeople. They're the mechanics, the diesel mechanics, the welders, the facility managers. I look at part of my job. What I do now is I've done a lot. I've done millions of dollars in roofs for school districts, right? And I put it in dollar terms because that helps put it into perspective for folks listening, that it's a massive amount. I've done a massive amount of roofs for public school districts. And the person that you deal with when you're doing a job for a public school system is what is called a facility director or a facility manager. And this is a guy that is in charge of the buildings. He's in charge of whether the roofs leak or the heating and cooling systems, whether they're functioning or not. And he's usually in charge of the thermostats, which is a thorn in their side because people want to have control over them. Anyway, everything from melting ice on the sidewalks to roofs leaking to everything in reference to the buildings, the lighting, all that kind of stuff. This is a really good position to have. It is in a lot of cases, it's a 6-figure income with wonderful benefits, like really good health and dental and retirement programs and all this stuff. And one particular school facility manager that I've worked with for several years, he just retired, but he was concerned. Man, he was concerned about, he's got nobody. He was saying that when he applied for that position years ago, and it was just, he wasn't applying for the facility manager. He worked his way into that. He started as like a groundskeeper for the school district or whatever. And worked his way up. But he said when he applied, there were several hundred applicants that he had to beat out to get this position. And he said now that he is trying to hire folks for the new school year or whatever. They are lucky if they get like 3 applicants, and hopefully one of them can pass a drug screening. And that is the difference. Is I feel like there's a lot of younger folks that are afraid to get their hands dirty in jobs like that, but they're not seeing the opportunity that is ahead of them. What say you on that?
Yeah, I think that's where, the target reader for someone younger, like there's two sides to this. One, we have to rethink public education in the US, because by the time I came through school in the 90s, even though I was relatively rural urban, there were no wood shops, metal shops. Like that didn't exist in my high school. So like returning that exposure to young people about trades, exposing young people to career opportunities outside of college, like hey, you could be a facilities manager. And, that is one approach to start to solve this problem. And like rejiggering ourselves as a nation to say like trades aren't less than, because that's what I grew up on. And, as far as the working hard, like, that's on every parent, right? Like, I know you do with your daughters. I see them do awesome things. I take my daughter on my trap line. I take my son. Like, there is something incumbent on us, whether it's through outdoor activities, sports, whatever, to start to build resilience in kids that aren't afraid of hard work. Like our motto in our house is like, we're Hansons, we do the hard things. And like my little 4-year-old will say that. And you can teach kids, you call it indoctrination or whatever, but yeah, it is. And you have to. And I don't think so many kids have that. And there's this immediacy effect. Like people want the end result. And I was guilty of that too. I thought once I went to college, I'd come out with $150,000 a year with a political science major.
Yeah.
Reality bitch slapped me hard. But, we have to teach kids like like you said, that guy went from groundskeeper all the way up, right? Like it's a hard path. That's not an easy thing to do. Anything in the trades is going to take a toll, but you have to see, giving the kids the ability to see what it could be, I think is very important. And that's been lacking on top of just even exposing them to trades at all.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me, I had this one guy, he was the facilities director for Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington. This guy, I swear he was like 80 years old and he just wouldn't retire. But a funny story, man, we had a roof project that required shutting down the power to this building. And it was an old building, old building. And the reason was because that power main came to the top of the roof. We had to reflash. Anyway, without boring people with all that, we had to figure out where that power was buried because this was years ago, and I'm kind of drawing a blank. For some reason, we had to figure out where the power line was buried coming to the building because it came to the building and then shot up to the roof and then split from there. And again, this building was probably 100 some odd years old. This 80-year-old, what I thought was like 80-year-old facility director, called his former boss, who had to have been 120, but was retired, to find out where the heck that power line was buried. And that old man shows up in a old pickup truck, 15, 20 minutes later, who had been retired from the university for, several years at this point, walks over to these bushes and puts a fluorescent orange mark down and says, "This is where the power line's buried because I hand dug this about 60 years ago." And he still remembered. I just, you just can't help but respect people like that. It's an amazing story. And if you'd have met this guy, he's probably still kicking around. And that was 10 years ago.
Well, that guy, he might not have had a college education, but, part of this book, was my own exploration beyond trapping as a trade. Like, it was about my going to welding school. I'm in the process of getting my electrical journeyman's license slowly in a part-time basis at night. And the thing that I took away from all the interviews I did with people who are in the trades, and, I've known this for a while, just from like my exposure to a lot of people in the hunting and trapping industry, but it made it extremely apparent, like the level of intellectual curiosity of like tradespeople is astounding. And the amount of like intellectual stimulation you can get from doing a job like welding or whatever is astounding. Like, I've gone to the upper echelons of American education systems where like, I remember doing a Bayesian stats course at Johns Hopkins University. It whooped my ass. If it weren't for my ex-wife, who was a math PhD, I probably would never have passed that course. However, that was intellectual stimulation. But when I'm in this journeyman's licensing approach, like the math and the calculations that go into making a building function are just as complicated and complex as any theoretical stats or math course that I've ever taken, but it's actually applied. And
interesting.
Unless I would have done that and gone there, I would never have known. Like you said, like electrician, whatever, anybody can do that. It's hard. Yeah, I struggled with some of like the derivatives and everything else, doing just the homework. much less actually going out and putting it in practice and pulling the right gauge wire and, doing the right things to be up to code, which is constantly changing too. Like if there's one thing I could hope for this book, is to start to beat down that stigma that I long held that was preached to me, just nationwide on like trades people are dumb, because that's the furthest thing you could ever get from the truth.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, and there's again, not to keep using meme. There's that meme, going around about what is it? Just because you went to college doesn't make you smart, kind of thing. And it's so true. I always think of when I was in the service, when I was in the Marines, some of the smartest people I have ever come across were in the Marines and were basic infantrymen, and some of the dumbest people I've ever met were also in the Marines, standing right next to
the had their favorite flavor crayon.
They did, and favorite crayons. We all love them, and but it's just there's like this dichotomy of like some people just don't care about what other people think. They have this thing where like this. I'm thinking of one guy in particular. He went on to become like this big shot attorney after the Marines. But I remember thinking when I was in the Marines with him, man, this guy is like almost too good, like too smart to be digging a fighting hole with me in the middle of nowhere, Iraq or something, wherever we were at. And but the reality is that guy, he had this dream of being, he was like me. We saw the commercial when we were kids, the Marine in the dress blues pulling out a sword and pursuing that. And I just have a lot of respect for people like that again, that I guess the dichotomy of what I'm getting at. We're not afraid to get our hands dirty, but we're also not afraid to learn and be philosophical from that standpoint. And I don't think that we need to have this tit for tat in society anymore. And I think that that's what this book is trying to achieve, where, college bachelor degree at a minimum is superior to a trade school at the local community college where the kid can earn while he's learning.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the concept that you bring to the table with that. And it says it so eloquently in the book. Everybody should read it.
Well, I appreciate that. And, I actually, I mean, this, I have my podcast, The Okayest Trapper, which is all about trapping, but I ended up having Jim Shockey on the other day. And we talked about writing because, he's obviously an author, and we just kind of geeked out on that mostly. But I asked him this question, and I never thought of it this way. I asked him, he was borderline dyslexic, could barely read when he was like, 5 or 6, but he loved books. He loved the way they felt. He loved the stories. And so he essentially taught himself to read. And then he had such a desire, he knew at that point he was going to write a book or series of books one day. And I asked him, is that grit and resilience to kind of fight through, like the dyslexia, all that stuff? He's like, no. He's like, fuck that. It's desire. He's like, my desire was so great that I didn't let any of those things get in my way. And I'm afraid that our kids and, even adults right now, they're lacking desire for something greater. And that path might be through the trades. That path might come through a college education. That path might come through none of those. But people are lacking this desire to push and to learn whatever it is to achieve their goals. It's that softness you were talking about. But I think we all need a little more desire in our lives, because when you have that, none of the barriers will be there. You'll knock them all down or find a way to.
How do we create that desire in kids? How do we create that need, that desire to learn, and to that factor of like curiosity? You know what I mean? Because I think curious people make the best whatever it is they do. I don't care if you're an attorney or a garbage man or an electrician or a philosopher working for NASA. Does NASA have philosophers? I don't even know. I'm making it up.
Yeah, I like
I'm sure they do. But or podcaster. You do a podcast, I do a podcast. I always think of like what makes Joe Rogan such a great podcaster? I'll tell you, he's a super curious guy. So he asks a question. So like in your mind, can we create that in our kids? Can we create this level of curiosity, or is that innate within certain people and not in others?
I asked Jim Shockey that exact question because I was curious, and he said it's innate. He's like, you can't teach that. You can build the environment around to maybe foster that curiosity. And like as a parent, that's my number one goal. I want to build an environment that makes my kids curious to learn. Now, will my son have the same like Kool-Aid man mentality that I have of like, if I want to learn to trap, I'm going to learn to trap, and I'm going to run through every wall until I figure it out. All right, I want to write a book. I'm going to run through every wall until I write a book and get it published. I don't know. I can't predict that. But I can tell you that I will be the example for my son to say, like, hey, push, always be curious. If your desire is great enough, you'll achieve that goal. Like right now, my daughter wants to be nothing but a snow leopard. So, if she wants to be a snow leopard, she's going to have to put a lot of desire in there if she's going to be that as an adult. Of course, I'm being like facetious here, but, teaching them that whatever they do want to do, they have to have a relentless curiosity, and it has to be through example, which goes back to parents. And I think there's just a lack of, curiosity amongst parents. Like, I could see it. It's so easy to get in a rut with kids, like when you're just trying to survive day by day, but you have to prioritize your own self and your own desires to some degree to show that. Otherwise, what do they have to look up to?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And it's curiosity is going to drive, this is a hunting podcast. So some of you young guys out there listening, that the curiosity is what will make you a better hunter. It made Zach a better trapper. I love the story that you told last time in our attempted recording, and also I think you talk about it in the book, but this curiosity that you had, and I don't know if you use that word specifically, but the fact that you put yourself in a position where you had to learn a skill outside of your digital dust is what you call it in the book, and when you ran into kind of some financial hardships, the money with the savings was running out, and you thought you'd have another job, and nope, what ended up paying the bills for you was that curiosity that led you to become a trapper and a taxidermist, and those hands-on skills kind of saved your bacon. I think that kind of speaks volumes as to the importance of having some kind of hands-on skill.
It's a hedge, right? And that's
the argument. It is.
Look, for people, it's like it will take an investment of your time for sure. It's not going to be easy. Nothing's easy. But if you invest in a skill, in the absolute worst case scenario, you have something to fall back on to potentially pay the bills. It might not pay you as much as what you're doing now as a knowledge worker or a lawyer or whatever, but it might get you by. That's what happened to me. Yeah. And in the best case scenario, you just have a skill. Yeah, you can learn electric. You might be able to rewire your house and not pay someone $50,000 to come and run it. You might be able to tack together a smoker if you know how to weld, or help fix your friend's trailer. Like, that's the worst case scenario, is that you're a helpful, more meaningful participant in society. That's pretty good, in my opinion.
Man, absolutely. And that I could use a welder, by the way, if anybody lives in or around Heron, Montana, because that is one thing I don't know. I don't know anything about, but it's stupid things, man. Like I have this little utility trailer. The bearings blew out in it, and I've done bearings years ago on an old boat trailer, but I haven't done them in years. And so the nice thing, we were talking about technology, good old YouTube, man. I got those bearings replaced. I didn't have to. The other alternative is hiring somebody to do that. And man, that's bad on a checkbook if you don't know how to do, just so folks like understand, like if you need an electrician to come run a new socket or something, you're looking at $600, $700, $800 at a minimum. And I know that if you go walking down the Home Depot aisle, you could look at those parts and you could find that the socket itself is like, what, $1.99?
Something. Then the wire's expensive, but not.
Yeah, wire. Yeah, exactly. And so, but it's like this. I had this business consultant, if you will. I was in this business kind of seminar, I guess. I'm kind of drawing a blank here. Anyway, he played this video. It's a really good video of this, the Chernobyl meltdown. Remember the nuclear facility that melted down, and he says what people don't know is there was a second one, like a few months later, in Russia, and they called the German engineer guy that not only designed, but he hands-on helped build this facility. They called him up and they flew him out there, and they're like, this whole nuclear facility, it's gonna melt down, and there's steam going everywhere, and there's like alarms going off and big red lights flashing, and he calmly walks down into the basement of this nuclear facility, and he looks at all the dials down there, and he looks at one in particular, and it's got this knob on it, and he twists it to the right, and all of a sudden all the temperatures start dropping and everything calms down, and he gets back and sends them a bill for $100,000. And they're like, wait a minute, you got to break this thing down. $100,000. You've got to explain that you were only here for 10 minutes. And he sends them back another invoice. It said, turning the knob to stop nuclear catastrophe, $1.
Yep.
Knowing which knob to turn, $99,999. You know, it's that concept, and it's a beautiful thing.
100%. And like, you know, it's, you know, I love that concept, but you also don't have to be the expert, right? You know, like, and that's, I think, one of the things that I'm trying to preach too. Like, there's going to be people who've been welders for 30 years who could charge that. Like me, as someone who has a very basic structural welding cert, no way. Like, I might be able to go get a job slapping some metal together, but it's going to be a base rate because I don't have those years of experience.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, you could at least start and try. And I think that's important. But then it's also important to have these people who've been doing that, and then for them to mentor you, whether that's in person or now on YouTube, where you can find all these great resources to, you know, it's not a black box anymore. You can really learn anything now, and you have to be relentlessly curious, but you can do it.
Yeah. I love it. I think that one of the key takeaways I'd really like people to get from this episode, especially some of the younger guys out there listening and gals out there listening, is you've been for years had it beat into your head that the only future that exists is a future of massive amounts of college debt and careers that may or may not pan out. Because what I found, like in college, and you could probably attest to this too, Zach, but what I found is most of the folks I was in college with when I was in school, they were in college because they didn't know what they wanted to do.
Yep.
And you contrast that with like a 19-year-old apprentice journeyman or apprentice electrician who's making, 70 grand at 19 years old, without mortgages and kids and expensive diapers and pets and, minivans and all that kind of stuff. There is a real opportunity here for young people, because again, that stat that I was trying to reference, and I don't remember what it was, but it was awful. It was like 85% of tradespeople are going to be retired in the next 10 years, which is, that's an astronomical, that's an astounding number. So if you think about the opportunity that is at hand for folks that are starting out, or even maybe somebody that is, I don't know how old you are, Zach, but I'm 44. If I had an inkling to start over somewhere, I wouldn't hesitate to go to a trade school, go work under a journeyman and be an apprentice. Because the thing is the opportunity over the next decade is major. And I look at the way you tell the story in the book about how like AI is taking a lot of these knowledge type jobs out.
Mm-hmm.
We have to, I think, as a society, start looking at, well, what are the alternatives? What else can we do? What can we pursue? And when I look at, I tried to install a sink in my bathroom. It didn't work out so well. So guess what? I called a plumber that I know. $600 later, it was all ready to go. I was glad to pay that guy, but I'd rather not have to pay him. But think about in his situation, these are not. This is not like, I look at it. How does that guy put it that I listen to? There's necessity type trades and there's vanity type trades, and there's nothing wrong with either one, but like people will choose to get their kitchen remodeled, but they have to call a plumber when something's leaking, right?
Yeah.
And so how's that for job security for some of you young folks? Like think about that.
And I think on top of that, and some of the guys I interviewed in the book too, if you read it, it doesn't mean you don't have to go to college either. Again, it's not kicking rocks. Like you might start and learn. And like one of the guys I interviewed, he was a construction guy. Like he always knew he wanted to go into that. So he went right out of school. People said, why are you not going to college? He's like, why do I need to go to college? Like I can go learn on the job. And then he went back and got an engineering degree, you know, because he wanted to go to that next level. And that was what was required. But he knew with precision why he was going, and he had an output, and he still worked through that process.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing. Like you don't have to do one or the other. It could be a great mix. Like looking back, I could have gone and gotten my political science degree, but I was desensitized to any trade. Like I could have learned to weld. I could have learned to be a plumber. I could have done my electrical journeyman's license while I was in college. It would have been work, but it would have been no more work than what I was doing. I was working jobs through college too, but they were like, like, you know, working at a restaurant or, you know, doing this, that, and the other. And I didn't have that mentality of, you know, learn something valuable along the way, but they don't have to be at the expense of one another. It could be together, but like you said, just think about it. Think critically about it. And there's an opportunity out there. Just statistically speaking, there is a great opportunity where these tradespeople are going to continue to be able to charge a premium because there's none left.
Absolutely. That I think is the key point. So if you're a young guy and you're just like kind of, you know, getting out of high school and thinking, man, what am I going to do with my life? Take a real hard look at the trades, folks. Like I really do believe that. I wish I could start over and do it again, and everybody does. There isn't a person my age that doesn't wish they could go back and do things over and whatnot. But that, because it's not like I'd change a whole bunch, but I wouldn't have spent $80,000 going to college.
Yep.
You know, it just wasn't. And it might be the right thing for some of you, but for me, it was a lot of wasted money and a lot of wasted ass ache too, because I'm a terrible student. Zach, your Instagram handle is Let Me Die Learning, and that is I want you to talk about that for a minute, because that is a statement that speaks to that curiosity factor that we were talking about. And you're such an interesting guy, because you are such this, you know, the background of white collar executive type corporation, you know, level jobs. And now, you know, I loved the turning feral story of you moving out to Atlanta, Idaho, right?
Yep.
I mean, this is one of the most secluded towns in the lower 48. It's like, what, 80 miles to the next town, and like there's nothing in Atlanta, Idaho, hardly. No. There's probably a bar.
There is a bar.
Yeah. Now, I know Idaho. And so it's an amazing story. So why do you call your Instagram handle Let Me Die Learning?
You know, it just goes to that ethos I have of not being afraid to try things. Like I was a pretty scared kid. Just for whatever reason, I was afraid to talk to people. I was afraid to do a lot of stuff. And when I finally, like my dad kind of forced me eventually when I was like 10, 12, 13, like if I wanted to do something, I had to call the store. And I just got over that fear, and I realized what was on the other side of it. It's like, oh, you can just try things? That's kind of cool. And, you know, I call myself, you know, it's like the jackass of all trades. Like I'm an inch deep and a mile wide in a lot of areas. And now I've gone deeper in some areas, of course, and I can even call myself an expert in a lot of areas. But, you know, it becomes with that relentless curiosity. And that's the idea, like that Let Me Die Learning. Like I hope one day as I'm skirting into my grave that I'm still curious, that I'm still seeking out things to learn. That could be philosophical. That could be about, you know, why people want to wear cat ears all day. I don't know, but I want to be curious about it, and I want to study, and I want to you know, going back to the Charlie Kirk thing, I want to have discourse with people. I want to be able to ask and understand from different positions, and I want to be good at stuff.
Yeah. It's a great way to put it, man. You know, and speaking on that topic, I hope that we always have the ability to have that discourse without people finding it necessary to hurt each other and shoot at each other. And man, I just am so upset about this Charlie Kirk situation. I've been a fan of his. He's like one of those once in a generation type minds. And I just can't stop thinking about his children who are at that age where they're really not going to have any memory of him. And my heart is just broken. I pray for his family and his kids, and what a tragedy beyond what I could proportionally like say in words. There's just no words. I can't. Anyway, I didn't mean to take it off track there, but man, I'm upset about it.
Yeah, I think you, me, and so many other people, which is equal parts. Feels good to see that, but you at what cost, right? You wish it didn't come at the cost that it did.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to keep praying for his family, and it's just, there's nothing that's going to make it better for him. That's for sure. So, okay, my man. I don't want to end it on a low note like that. I want people to know that this book, the Trade Gap, it's available probably at Amazon. I'm going to have a link. I'm sure you've got a link I could use.
Yep.
I appreciate guys like you that take the time. It's a unique topic to tackle. Not a lot of people. I mean, you've got your Mike Rose out there and all that kind of stuff. But you're the right guy to tackle this because you've got experience on both sides of the spectrum of this. You've been that corporate executive, you've been that tradesman, and you've been through the ringer on both and how to learn both. And there's just this mastery you have on this topic, and so I think it was perfect. It's something I'm passionate about, and for those of you listening, it's worth it to grab this book, pick it up, support Zach. He puts a lot of work into this. It's such a good read. You really are. On top of being a taxidermist and a digital dust creator, however you put it, and a welder and a trapper and a podcaster and a writer, you're like an artist when it comes to writing. It's really good stuff, man. I appreciate you, man, and thanks for coming on the show, and tell everybody where they could find you and the book.
Yeah, well, first off, appreciate that. People curious, it's the Trade Gap. Turning Feral, all are on Amazon. You can also find it like barnesandnoble.com, walmart.com, really any of the retail book outlets online. Instagram, Let Me Die Learning. That's where I post shenanigans from being up in our little remote cabin, as well as episodes from my podcast, The Okayest Trapper, where I talk with a lot of trappers across the country, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, that's about it.
That is it. I haven't been keeping. I'm super curious about this lever actions episode, but you had my buddy Rusty Kramer on.
Oh yeah.
I believe him to be the first man that trapped a wolf in the state of Idaho. By the way,
sure was, and we talked all about that. So Rusty was my first really point of contact outside of the old timers in Atlanta of trapping, because I reached out to him as the president of the Association. I don't know if you know this, but he just got voted in to be the president of the National Trappers Association.
I did not know that. No, I'm glad you told me that. I should send him a message.
Yeah, reach out to him. Say congratulations or condolences, however you want to look at it. But
he's a tall order.
Yep. So, but he's the man to do it. So that's exciting, and he's done amazing things for trapping in Idaho, specifically around wolf trapping. If you get a wild hair, go listen to it, because the stories of his first bulls in Idaho are pretty interesting.
Yeah, super interesting stuff. And he was one of the first guests that I actually had in the Broken Time studio, in the original Broken Time studio. He physically came in and we recorded in person, which was pretty neat. So anyway, all right, Zach. Well, I really appreciate you joining me, man. Great work on the book. Everybody listening, it's called The Trade Gap by Zachary Craig Hanson, and the link will be in the show notes for this book. So even if you don't want to read it, guys, I'd encourage you to support him and buy the book. It means a lot to a writer. And thanks a bunch. Thanks again, Zach. Obviously, we're going to have to do this again at some point. I love having you on.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it, Jim.